Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another video. So in today's video I thought I would sit and run through all the books I managed to read in May. Now I'm pretty sure there's 7 books I read, which is not a lot, which is quite surprising. I tend to average 8 or more, but I was in quite a bit of a slump in May, and I mean 2 of these are graphic novels as well, so whether you want to count them they still count towards my reading goal, but I literally could sit and read them in like half an hour. So the fact that without that I read 5 like physical novel books is quite bad for me. But like I said, I was in a bit of a slump. There were a few days where I didn't really read much or at all, and I mean that's okay. I'm still kind of in a slump. I've been doing a read along and that kind of puts me in a slump because I'm being told how many pages I have to read on over a certain amount of days, and for some reason it just kind of puts my brain into you can't read anything else mode, which is just, yeah, annoying. So we're just going to run through the books that I read over May. We're just going to go from the first book I read to the last book I read because that's just kind of the order that I've got them stacked in, and I will just tell you a bit about them and whether I liked them or not. So let me put my tea down and we can get started. Okay, so the first book I have to talk about is probably like one of the best books I have read. I really enjoyed it. I got sent an arc of it, decided to just kind of drop everything to read it because it really sounded interesting and I was kind of in a bit of a slump and I thought that would get me out of it. Devoured it. It was so incredible. Posted my thoughts on my social media pages, and then the author decided to start following me on Instagram and TikTok, and let's just say we're best buds pretty much. And then I thought nothing of it, you know, that's kind of it, but it's a book that I'm definitely going to be recommending when it comes out. And then I got invited to the Orbit party, and little did I know that obviously the book we are talking about is published by Orbit, and when I got there I literally looked across the room and she was there. The author of this book was there and I was starstruck. It was incredible. And we got little goodie bags and her book was in it, so I was able to grab her at the end of the night. So she actually signed my book, dedicated to me, and it was just the best experience ever. And I have a picture with her, and you know when you just like, you really like meet an author, and she's definitely underrated. She hasn't published a book. This is her first book and I just love her. She's so sweet and so kind, and the fact that I have 2 copies of her book as well as being able to meet her and have a chat with her, it was just incredible. So I should have just showed you the book to begin with anyway, but the book in question is Long Live Evil by Sarah Rees Brennan. Now I got sent this copy from Orbit. It still has like the stickers and like the author letter in here as well, but we got sent it with like a signed book plate, which again, stunning as it is. So I already have a book that was signed from her, so this is the book that I actually read. And then we got, it's exactly the same. I think I spoke in a video that I thought it was different because I thought this one had a map and this one didn't, but I have checked and they are identical. But it was a book that I really enjoyed, and having 2 copies of this, I'm fine with that. So then this is the book that I got at the party, and she signed and dedicated it to me, and again, absolutely love it. And because I did a TikTok video on it just describing how much I loved this book, she put the best video ever, and she said that she watches that video so many times, and I'm very good at selling a book. So if you're going to read any book, I think in this video, maybe one other to be honest, it needs to be this one. So basically the premise of this is our main character, Ray. She loves reading, loves books, but she's poorly. She's in the hospital, she has cancer, and it's not looking very good for her. So one day this random person kind of comes up to her and says, if you could be transported to any fantasy world, would you know, be transported to this world, find this magic flower and retrieve it, because if you can do that, then you will come back to your life and you're going to be cancer free, you're going to be better, you are going to be cured. And the idea of going into like your favorite fantasy world in general, yes, of course, but then the chance to be able to be better as well, why would you say no? So of course she ended up saying yes. So I believe that while she was transported, she was kind of put into a coma while she was somewhere else, because her physical body was there, but her actual like soul, or however you want to describe it, was transported to this other body in this world. So the world that she got transported to is her favourite fantasy world. But when she woke up, obviously you kind of assume you're going to be the princess or something, and you're going to, you know, the damsel in distress sort of person. But she was basically on death row when she went to this fantasy world, because she ended up becoming the villainess, which I just think is so cool. So she basically had to try and get out of, I think, being executed, because like the day she got transported, like they were supposed to kill her, and then so she is this villainess, so she has to keep up this rouge, this facade, I suppose, of being the villainess, but she was very, very good at that as well. And then she had to try and gather her troops, and she was going to gather like a little villainous army to try and find this flower to try and save herself, basically. And there's twists and there's turns, and the fact that she meets someone in this who you just kind of assume is just another character, but he ends up being an actual person from the real world, so he was also transported, and the fact that he couldn't get to the flower in time, so he's now stuck there. So that was a kind of a bit of a twist. Obviously we're not going to know, I'm not going to tell you who that is, but this was just such an incredible read. I had such a fun time reading this, and it got even better knowing that I've met her, and she is in the middle of writing book 2, and I have said if you want me to read it and promote it, I will, because if you want me to go on tour with you, I will. But this was just such an incredible read, and it's just, you get transported to your favourite fantasy world and you become the villain, and I just love the idea of that and the concept of that. So this was definitely one of the best books I read in the month of May, and the fact that it was the first book I read as well was just incredible. And Sarah Rees Brennan has my heart. It's obviously going to be a series. I don't know if it's just going to be a duology or whether there's going to be more, but this comes out in August. I'm not too sure the date, it just says August. But if you are going to pick up a book in the summer, it really needs to be this. I just loved this with my whole heart, and it was just a great start to the reading month. And then after reading that, I then decided to pick up a romance book, because I just thought obviously that was a great fantasy book. I didn't want to then get into a slump, which I did end up getting into a slump anyway. But then there was one Ashley Poston book that I never got around to reading, because I read a novel love story and I've read The Dead Romantics, and the only other book by her that I hadn't read was The 7 Year Slip. So I decided to pick this up, and again, a great read. I love Ashley Poston's writing. This was quite fantasy-ish just because there was a 7 year slip, and you know, it had a bit of time travel in. I wouldn't say it's necessarily like fantasy. There's just a bit of time travel, so kind of like The Time Traveler's Wife. You wouldn't necessarily put that in fantasy, but it's that magical sort of element. So in this we are following Clementine. Now Clementine is a like book publicist, I believe, so again a lot of book love I've recently just discovered. But she does like her job, but she has a hard time finding romance, I suppose. So she ends up bumping into this guy because she's staying at her aunt's flat place, and then when she gets there, there's this just random guy there, and she just doesn't really know who he is. He said that the aunt knows he's there and said that he's welcome to stay, so that's kind of that. They meet, and then she leaves the apartment, and then the next time she goes there, he's gone, he's not there, so she just gathered he's left. But it's the fact that every time she leaves and goes back into the apartment, not everything is as it seems. So when she enters the apartment with him there, she is back in the past 7 years, and he doesn't realise that. He obviously thinks it's the present. So they end up forming this relationship together from spending time together in this apartment, and then she's trying to figure out what she should do in life, because obviously she wants to kind of be with him, but he's 7 years in the past, so how is she going to find him in the future? So she tries to find him in the future, and they end up meeting, which is just insane, because obviously she learns a lot about him, so she kind of figures out where he's going to be in 7 years, and he's kind of going by a different name. And when they meet, you know, in the real present, when he's older and she's the same age, I suppose, she kind of doesn't really recognize him, but does. But then he never lets on that he knows who she is, which is a bit sad. But then, you know, there's a lot of twists and turns, and I just thought it was a really great romance. It felt really realistic, which is very weird to kind of say, because there was a 7-year time slip. Like, it's not going to happen ever. That's just not ever going to be plausible. Like, but it just felt really real, their connection, their growing together, and the fact that, you know, they kind of wanted to figure out who they were as well. So he focused on his job, she focused on her job, and you know, when you just, it was just such a fun read. And Ashley Poston is just an incredible writer. Now, a novel love story, I read that last month, I believe, and that's not actually out yet. That does come out in the summer. So if you do want a good romance novel for the summer, I would definitely pick up a novel love story. This is one of her older ones, but it is just the only one I hadn't read. I don't know how I managed to kind of read her newer one that's not even out yet before this one. It's just kind of how it's worked. But it was such a fun read. I love the cover of this in general. I really getting into my romance and like reading other genres, and I love that I picked this up, honestly. It was just such a fun time, and I keep looking at the books I've read, and I don't necessarily think I had a bad reading month. Like, most of the books I read were really, really good. I mean, if I can read really, really good books and just not read as much, I think I'm going to be happy with that, because I do kind of want to focus more on quality over quantity. I don't want to necessarily read 10,000 books a year. I want to read the books I'm really going to enjoy, and this was definitely one of them. So again, two great books at the start of the month, incredible. And then we went on to the third book that I read that I am still raving about, because I still try and tell people at work to read it, and we have it at work, and I managed to convince someone to buy it the other day, and that just made my heart sing, because it's honestly such a good book. And I did get sent the arc of it, so I did read the arc, but then I also got sent the finished copy as well, so I do have both, and I do plan on keeping both because I did really enjoy it. And the book is 5 Broken Blades. Now, this is brand new out. It should be out in all shops, and if they don't have it, it is a crime, because they should have it. So this, we are basically following 5 killers, 5 people who want the king dead. Now, they kind of all have their reasons to want the king dead. He's called King June, I believe. Now, these are guys, gals, whoever. They are from all across the world. Not the world, but, you know, they're part of the empire. And they all have their reasons for wanting the king dead. You know, own personal vendettas, as you will. And all of these people are very, very different. They are liars, they are thieves. One is like a strong man who is basically hired to kill people. So they all have their reasons, and you kind of figure out at the end of the book that this random one person kind of brought them together, because you kind of thought it was a bit weird that all these people were going to go and kill the king at the same time. Like, that's not just coincident. But you find out that someone kind of wrangled them together all at once. Obviously, I'm not going to spoil it. So they all go on their journey to find the king, to try and plan to kill him, and they're all obviously on their own, and then they end up meeting up together. And there is such a twist at the end of this. It is insane. This is obviously, again, not a standalone, because fantasy writers don't like doing standalones. They like writing multiple books, which is absolutely fine. It draws you in. But you know when you just like, this has just come out and I need the next one already. But it was such a fun read. I definitely read this very, very quickly, and I encourage a lot of people at work to pick this up and at least own it and potentially read it. It was very fast paced. I loved the fight scenes in this. There was a lot of plot. Oh, I just realised there is a little bookmark kind of in here as well. Very cool. I forgot about that. But it was just such a fun time, and I don't think I've ever heard of this author. Now, I'm not too sure if this is her first book or whether she has written other books. I'm not too sure about that. I'm definitely in need of the second book in this series, like now. Again, it was a very different sort of fantasy book. It's not necessarily romance. There is always going to be a romance element in fantasy books, I think, just in general nowadays, but it was definitely not the whole point of it. It was definitely more like plot and character driven, and I quite liked that, because I think I am still currently in the middle of The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. I started that in May and I'm still currently reading that, so hopefully that's kind of one we can finish in June. But I think like starting that, I'm very much enjoying like having a romantasy book as well as a fantasy book. Like, I don't mind a high fantasy book, and it was very refreshing reading a book that didn't necessarily have all the smut that you kind of get in romance books and romantasy books. And yeah, it was just such an incredible read. Again, if you're going to pick up a book, it is currently out now, so you can read this one first, and then in August you can pick up Sarah Rees Brennan's book. I think that's fine. That will work out perfectly. But honestly, it was such a good read. I will be grabbing the next book as soon as possible. It was just very, very refreshing, I think, and I definitely needed that. And I think after this, I think this is the book that kind of put me into the slump a little bit, because I had 3 very good books read, and then it was just like, well, what kind of do I read now? And yeah, kind of looking back and looking at the stat, this has to be where the slump sort of started, which is why the next 2 books I'm going to talk about is the graphic novels that I ended up reading to kind of get me in the mood of reading, I suppose, because I definitely just kind of stopped. And obviously that's okay. Reading is a hobby. You don't have to read every day. You don't have to read a book a day or anything like that. But I do like reading, and the fact that I kind of just stopped reading was a bit like, what do I do now, sort of. So I picked up these graphic novels. Now these graphic novels are, I always forget if it's for 5 to 8s or 9 to 12s, but it's definitely for younger readers. And there is nothing wrong with that, because I had such a fun time reading these. It was insane. And the art style is just incredible. And the 3rd book has been released, and I do already own a copy of that, so I will probably be reading that in June. It's not officially on the TBR for June, but I'm probably going to read it in June because I kind of want to find out what's going to happen. And the book in question is the Lightful series. So this is the first one, and it's The Girl and the Goldarian. I think that's how you pronounce it. Again, I'm terrible with pronunciation. And the second book is called Shadow of the Bird. So I'll just show you what they look like. And honestly, the art style in this is insane. The pictures, I mean, you can understand why it probably takes like over a year for these books to come out, because the detail in this is just stunning. And it's definitely one that kind of drew me in, because I did pick this up at work, I believe. I think it wasn't one that I requested through Publisher Mail or anything like that. It was a book that we got in at work, and I looked at it and just went, you know, I just flicked through it, and that was just stunning. And I was just like, maybe I need this, maybe I should read these. So I ended up buying them. I think I bought them a couple months ago, and I just never got around to it. And then I just thought, actually, why not pick them up? So we are following B. Now, B is the just standard sort of person, and Cad is the Goldarian here. So B has a father who is basically like a stepfather, or not her biological father, and he is a pig wizard apparently, and he has all these knowings about everything that's going on, and he wants to go on an adventure. So he decides to just up and go one day, and she finds a note from him and is very worried and wants to go and find him. So she goes on the hunt to try and find him, and accidentally bumps into Cad. She falls out of a tree, Cad saves her. That's the start of a beautiful friendship between them. And then so she goes on this adventure, and she takes this ball of light, like it's kind of in like a light bulb, just I suppose to light the way, or whether she was told that she always needed to keep it with her, I'm not too sure. But she took this ball of light with her. Now this ball of light ends up being very, very important, because it's the last light on Earth, or whatever planet they're from, and people are wanting it, people are wanting to steal it because it's very important. So while she's trying to find her dad, she's also then trying to not get murdered by these people because they want this ball of light. It's such a fun read. Like, obviously it's not scary or anything like that. It's a kid's book. But it was so fun to watch their journey together, because she ends up finding her pig wizard dad and realizes that actually this other quest is much more important. So she's found him, he's safe, but she needs to kind of carry on with Cad, because Cad is alone. Cad is the only Goldarian left, he believes. He wants to try and find his family. So he helped her find her family by finding the pig wizard. So she wants to carry on and find his family for him, which is beautiful. So we then carry on following the story in obviously the second book as well, and we don't want the light to go out, and we find this really scary bird that is very, very important, that you think is a bad guy, but then you kind of think he's a good guy, but then you also kind of think he's a bad guy, and you don't really know if he's a good guy or a bad guy. And I'm probably just confusing you now, because I think I've confused myself. But at the end of this, everything goes dark basically, because they thought they were doing the right thing, and apparently not. She had a feeling in her gut that something just wasn't quite right with what they were doing, and maybe it was wrong, and at the end of this, the second one, everything goes dark, and you know when you just finish it and you go, oh, I need the next one, I kind of want to know how it carries on. Like I said, the art style is stunning. It's definitely the thing that drew me in. It is for younger readers, but I've had such a fun time, and I am 27 years old, and I am very proud to own these and read these. I would happily sit and read these in public. I have no shame. It is a book. So if you want a fun time, obviously I did sit and read these in one sitting. I read it in about half an hour. There's, you know, it's pictures with words on, not a lot of context. It was just a really fun time, and it definitely helped because I did want to pick these up. I read this one like late at night, and then I picked up the next one like the next morning, and it did make me want to read, which is kind of the idea of why I started it. So it definitely helped with the slump, but it didn't help much because after this I literally read 2 other books, so it didn't necessarily help. But I had such a fun time reading this, and the author is Tim Probert, so he writes it and designs it himself, and he needs a medal or something because I would happily photocopy some of these pictures and just print them out and have them on my wall because they are stunning. So I had such fun time with this, and I'm definitely, like I said, I'm going to pick up the 3rd one in June, fingers crossed, and I will let you know my thoughts in the next wrap-up video. But it was just such a fun time, and it's quite nice to pick up a younger book because I don't really need to think about what I'm reading. I just can have fun while reading it. And I suppose that's the whole point of reading, is to have fun. So after that, we then have 2 books left. Now I did only read this next book just because I am part of the read along for the second one. I read this in a very quick amount of time, and I probably didn't take the time and the care that I should have done while reading this, because I'm not going to be able to give like the best sort of description about this. I'm basically going to read the back of the blurb for you because I kind of don't really remember what happened. I am kind of reading the second one as well, but I don't want to really talk about that because obviously it's spoilers, and I've kind of forgotten what's happened in this one because I listened to this as an audiobook, and I probably shouldn't have done that because when I do listen to audiobooks, sometimes I can listen and remember everything, and sometimes it's just kind of, I hear them talking but the information doesn't necessarily go in, and that's kind of happened here. So I probably just need to do a bit of a recap. But the book is The Curse of Saints by Kate Dramis. So this came out in hardback last year, and it was gorgeous, it was stunning. I never got around to picking it up, and I don't know how I ended up with a copy of this. I either bought it or it got sent to me, but I got told that I was part of the read along for the second book, so obviously I needed to pick up the first one, and I had about 3 days in between the email from saying I'm part of it to starting that book, so I knew I needed to just kind of crack on, and an audiobook was the best way because again I was kind of in a bit of a slump, and I knew if I physically read this I wouldn't have finished it in time, and it just would have put me behind schedule for everything else. So let me just read the blurb for you because I'm not going to be the best at trying to describe what's going on. The main person in the story is Aya. I'm probably going to say both, but it's A-Y-A. Aya, I'm not too sure. So as spymaster to the Queen, Aya's God-given gifts help ensure dark magic never returns to the realm. But rumours of its reappearance in a nearby kingdom must be investigated, and unfortunately not by Aya alone. So Will is the Queen's enforcer, and he's sent to, and as bitter rivals, neither trusts the other. Now, I don't know if I need to say this, but this is an enemies to lovers, and it's a very, very good enemies to lovers. We'll leave it at that. So yet, when Aya's power unleashes a force not seen in 500 years, she has little choice but to turn to Will. Can these rivals put aside their enmity? Am I pronouncing that right? Can I just not pronounce words today? To figure out if she is cursed, and will this danger bring them unexpectedly closer or drive them further apart? Though Aya attempts to save the realm she loves, but with untold power at her fingertips, she risks destroying it too. So this is a first book in a series, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be a trilogy or more because, not that I've seen spoilers, but I've heard people talking about the second one and they've been saying, oh, I really need the third one. So I kind of get the feeling that it's going to be a trilogy or more. Now, it was very fast paced, and I do kind of remember the enemies to lovers, and I really like the angst and everything between the two characters, and I really, really enjoyed that. But other than that, I don't necessarily remember anything else. And that is completely my fault. That's not anything to do with the writing or the author. I just rushed this too quickly and just couldn't remember it. So I think I'm probably gonna have to go on YouTube, I think, and find someone's review to kind of watch, or go on Goodreads and have a read of someone's just recapping everything. It's spoiler filled, probably would be better, but I do just kind of need someone to tell me what happened, because I just remember the enemies to lovers, and I mean, I do like a fantasy romance as it is, and the fact that that's the only part I remember probably says a lot about me. But it was a fun read, but I did only pick it up because I had to, otherwise it was nowhere near my TBR. To be honest, I kind of forgot that I actually had it. I thought I was going to have to buy it or rent it or go to the library or something to kind of grab it. But it was a fun read, but I just don't necessarily remember much about it. But again, completely my fault. Nothing to do with the book, nothing to do with the author. I just rushed it. So, saying that, I finished that, and then I have kind of been reading The Curse of Sins, which is the second book, so that's kind of took up most of my time at the end of May, which is kind of why I don't think I really finished another book apart from this one. So I started this one on my way to London for the Orbit party, and then put it down for a couple days, and then I kind of just wanted to pick it up again because I thought it was easier to kind of speed through this, and it was to like pick up The Final Empire or something like that. And I did really enjoy the first one. I have really enjoyed the second one, and I'm excited for the third one as well. And I'm pretty sure all the books I've read is going to be part of series. Yeah, they're all parts of the series. So I haven't even read a standalone this month, last month, whatever month we're in. So this book matches the outfit for today, and it is Rule of the Aurora King. Now, the first book is yellow, gold, and it is, oh, it's on the back, thank God, because I couldn't remember. It is Trial of the Sun Queen. I devoured that book, absolutely loved it. I'm pretty sure I gave it 5 stars. It was incredible. What a great enemies to lovers romance. And again, enemies to lovers is my favourite trope. I could not get enough of it. And the enemies to lovers in this is, again, insane. It's very, I feel like it's very character driven, and I do quite like that. There obviously is a plot, and I don't really want to say too much because obviously it's the second book in a series already. I don't know if I can say anything really, but it was such a fun read. The enemies to lovers, again, I've been posting some pictures on my Instagram stories of some quotes, and I kind of scribbled everything else out, and people have been messaging me going, what is the book? I need to add it to my TBR, because some of the quotes that you read, you know, when you just like, if you read that, you're going to want to read the book, and it's such an amazing read. I don't know if I can actually find, let's see if I can find some of the quotes and read them to you, because they must be saved in like my archives or something like that, because I genuinely think it's worth sharing this with you because I just loved it so much. So one of the quotes is, when I'm around her, I can't breathe, I can't think. I'm tongue-tied and can barely speak when she looks at me with that accusing stare and that mixture of raw vulnerability and fierce defiance in her eyes. Why is she the most breathtaking thing I've ever seen? Ugh, honestly, we're gonna carry on. She smells like every fantasy I've ever had, like the roots growing in the earth and the hearts of blooming roses, like lightning and smoke and pure untamed flames. Honestly. And then we have, when you're used to something, it's hard to appreciate it for its beauty. I just thought that was a really great quote. And then, this is nearer the end of the book, but obviously there's no spoilers. It says, you're mine, Law. You might not believe it yet, but you are, and I'm not going to let that monster touch you ever again. Please tell me if you want to read this book now, after those quotes, because you know when you just like, yes, that is the enemies to lovers that I want. It is a touch her, you will die. He has claimed her. I don't know, I'm gonna kind of read the blurb, I think, because I don't know how to kind of describe this book without spoiling it. So if I read the blurb, you're not going to get any new information from me. I think that's kind of the best way to go about this. I am not his conquest, I am not his to claim. Freed from the golden clutches of the Sun King, Law now finds herself in the hands of Nadir, the Aurora Prince. Convinced she's hiding something, he's willing to do whatever it takes to make her talk, but Law knows the value of secrets, and she's been keeping them her entire life, and she's not letting hers go without a fight. When Law and Nadir team up to search for a lost item that holds the key to her past and her future, she isn't sure that she can trust him. All she knows is she won't fall for another royal fae's promises again. With the Sun King determined to reclaim her, Law must keep her on the move, but nowhere is safe. Not until she destroys him and the Aurora King. So it is a fantasy romance, and it's just, I just really love this. The third book is Blue, I believe, and I honestly cannot remember the title of the book, but it was such a fun read, and I think I finished this yesterday, so that was the 31st of May, I believe. So literally the last day I possibly could finish a book, and I managed to finish it, and it was such, yeah, it was such a great book, and it's a great enemies to lovers romance. And I think this author is very underrated as well, because I don't see many people talk about her books, but I really had a good time. And again, if you want a fun time, there is quite a bit of smut in this, and there's nothing wrong with that. It was a wild ride, so that's all I need to say about this. So yeah, let me just pick up the pile. Now it's obviously going to look somewhat larger than what it is because I have got all the duplicates here as well, but that kind of helps because I haven't read as many books as I kind of wanted to. But this is all the books that I managed to read in the month of May. I did have a really good reading month. Most of these I did really enjoy. I think it was just The Curse of Saints that I didn't necessarily enjoy, but that's obviously again my fault because I didn't take the time to fully dive into the world. But it was such a fun time nonetheless, and I'm really excited for June. I think it might be a better reading month than May, but obviously I don't want to get my hopes up. As long as I'm reading, I kind of just want to read a little bit every day, but obviously sometimes you can't necessarily do that. But reading is such a hobby of mine, and I enjoy it so much, and I don't want to force myself to, I have to read so many pages a day, otherwise I'm just obviously not a book lover, because there is that stigmatism, and I don't want to be a part of that. If I like a book, I want to read it. If I don't like a book, I don't want to read it, and kind of that be that, and just kind of stop putting pressure on myself, I think. But we had such a good reading month. Let me know if you have read any of these, if you are going to add any of these to your TBR, because that would just make my heart sing if you are, because some of these books were really, really incredible, and it would be really nice to be able to talk to some people about it, because obviously a lot of the books I read are kind of new and not many people read them, but then I do try to read like books that necessarily other people wouldn't have read, and it's nice to just kind of see if you have or haven't read it. But if you do want to read them, let me know, because obviously I will have a chat with you about it. But yeah, I had a really great reading month. It wasn't as many as I thought I was going to read. When I kind of gathered all these books up this morning to film this video, I was very like surprised that the stack was so small, because I would go through some months where I'd read like over 10 books, and the fact that I've only read 7, it was a bit like heartbreaking really. But looking back, I actually had a really great reading month, and that's all that matters really. So yeah, let me know if you have read any of these, if you're going to add any of these to your TBR, and please let me know your top priority books for June. I have done my June TBR. I will link the video up there if you haven't got around to watching it, but I do have quite a good stack for June, and I really hope I can get to all of them, because they are just incredible books, and I'm literally staring at them now, and I'm still in the middle of like 2 or 3 books, and I really don't want to be, because I really want to start that, but you know, there's only so much you can do. But yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. Sorry for me rambling. I don't know how long I've been talking for, but I feel like I've been talking for years, so sorry if this is a little bit long, but I'm sure you guys don't really mind. So yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you for commenting, for liking, for subscribing, for sharing. Thank you for everything that you do, and I will see you in my next one.